All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive, powered by Radio BFit. I'm here and ready to jump headfirst into the science of what makes our brains resilient.
It's great to be here, and I think today's topic is something that hits home for, well, pretty much everyone who hasn't had that 3 p.m. moment just staring at a screen, and your brain just feels like it's completely stalled.
Oh, absolutely. Or, the classic, walking into a room and just completely forgetting why you went in there in the first place.
The dreaded doorway effect. It's so common, and for a long time, we just sort of accepted it, right? We figured, well, this is just what happens. The brain gets old, it gets overloaded, and it starts to, glitch.
Exactly. Like we're all running on this old, slow hardware that's just destined to fail, which is, I have to say, a really disempowering way to think about it.
It is, and that idea that cognitive decline is just this passive, inevitable thing that was the scientific dogma for decades. The belief was you hit adulthood, the brain's construction crew packs up and goes home, and it's a slow slide downhill from there.
Which implies we have no control, no agency over our own mental future.
Precisely. And that's why the material we've dug into today is, frankly, revolutionary. We're here to talk about the fact that you are not a passive observer in your brain's story. Our deep dive mission today is all about the biological reality of neurogenesis.
Neurogenesis, it's a big sciencey word.
It is, but the concept is actually pretty simple. Neurogenesis is the astonishing confirmed ability of the adult brain to keep growing new neurons.
So the brain is never too old to, upgrade itself?
Never too old. And that one finding completely flips the old beliefs about aging and potential on their head. It means we do have a kind of reset button.
Okay, but there's a catch, right?
There's always a catch. This upgrade system, it doesn't run on autopilot. It needs the right conditions, the right resources. So our mission today is to go past the wow factor and really unpack the essential ingredients the research points to, the specific nutrition, the lifestyle habits, and the supplements that you need to make this process happen consistently throughout your entire life.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with the basics. If neurogenesis is this process of growing new brain cells, where is this all happening? Where's the factory floor? And why was finding it in adults such a huge breakthrough?
So the main hub for this activity, the primary location, is an area called the hippocampus.
Right, which is central for memory and learning.
Exactly. It's the brain's hub for learning, consolidating memories, and even regulating emotion. For decades, the core belief was what they called the immutable neuron idea. Basically, you're born with all the brain cells you'll ever have.
And that's it. What you have is what you get.
Right. So the discovery that the adult hippocampus contains this reservoir of neural stem cells, cells that can divide and turn into new functioning neurons well into old age, that was just staggering. It changed everything.
So it's literally like a continuous renovation project happening right in the heart of our memory center. That's incredibly strategic of the brain.
It is. But as we said, this little factory is very sensitive. To work properly, to actually create a new healthy neuron and plug it into the network, it needs a few things. The literature is very consistent on this. First, it needs stable, reliable energy.
Okay.
Second, it needs very specific nutrient building blocks. And third, it needs a low stress, low inflammation environment. If any of those are off, the production line just, it slows down or stops completely.
And I'm guessing when that production line stops, that's when we start to feel the effects of, early cognitive aging. So let's talk about the threats. What are the biggest things in our modern lives that are actively slamming the brakes on neurogenesis?
Well, the antagonists are things we're all swimming in every day. The research points overwhelmingly to three big ones: chronic stress, a poor diet, and systemic inflammation.
Let's start with chronic stress. I think we all feel it, but we think of it as a mental thing. You're saying it's a physical poison for the brain.
Right.
We're talking about cortisol.
We are. When you're living in that low-level state of fight or flight all the time, your system is just flooded with cortisol, and that constant exposure is toxic to the hippocampus. Cortisol is basically screaming a message to the brain.
And that message is?
Emergency! We're under attack. Stop all long-term projects like building new cells and divert every last bit of energy to immediate survival.
It's a total resource drain.
It's a catastrophic one. All the energy that should be going to building new, healthy neurons gets rerouted to damage control, and it gets worse. Over time, that cortisol exposure can cause the branches of existing neurons to literally shrivel up and can even lead to a measurable shrinking of the hippocampus itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why after a long period of stress, your memory and ability to learn new things just feels completely shot.
It's a physical reality.
Yeah.
Your brain's hardware has been compromised.
So that really sets the stage for the age factor, doesn't it? Because we
Mhm.
have these modern stressors attacking us, but just the process of getting older already puts our brains at a disadvantage. That's a crucial point. We're not just fighting our lifestyle, we're fighting a natural slowdown. The research points to two major shifts that start to happen around our late 20s, and then they accelerate after age 30.
What's the first one?
The first is a decline in the natural production of something called BDNF. That's brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
We've called BDNF miracle grow for the brain before, but let's get a little more specific. What is it actually doing?
Well, BDNF is a protein, and it's basically the master regulator of brain plasticity. It has two critical jobs for neurogenesis. First, it keeps your existing neurons healthy and strong. It's a survival factor. Second, and this is the key part for growth, BDNF is the signal that tells those stem cells in the hippocampus to wake up, mature into functional neurons, and get integrated into the network.
So if the BDNF signal gets weaker, the rate of new cell growth just drops off a cliff.
Inevitably, yes. BDNF levels are considered one of the primary biomarkers for overall brain health. Less growth factor means less growth, period.
Okay, so that's the first age-related hurdle. What's the second one?
The second involves something called telomeres.
Ah, the little caps on our DNA.
Exactly, like the plastic tips on your shoelaces. They protect your chromosomes from fraying. Every time a cell divides, those telomeres get a little bit shorter. It's a natural part of aging.
And how does that specifically impact the brain's resilience?
Well, shorter telomeres are a universal sign of cellular aging. In the brain, it means those cells, the neurons and all their support cells, become much more vulnerable to the threats we've been talking about, like inflammation and oxidative stress.
So the brain's natural defense shield gets weaker.
It wears down. It makes the whole system less resilient to the constant assaults of modern life. It's a 1-2 punch. Less growth factor coming from BDNF, and a weaker defense system because of shorter telomeres.
Which paints a very clear picture of the challenge. So what does this all mean for our strategy? What do we do about it?
It means we have to be proactive. We have to adopt neuroprotective habits and use nutrients that specifically counteract these disadvantages. We're not just trying to maintain, we're actively trying to optimize the system to overcome that natural decline.
So let's break down the goals of that strategy. What are the key protective actions we need to take?
Absolutely. The research highlights 3 main goals. The first is to shield our neurons from free radical damage. We need to lower what's called oxidative stress.
That's basically like rust forming on the brain's machinery.
Oh, perfect way to put it. It's this constant low-level corrosion. So that's goal number 1. Stop the rust.
Okay, and goal number 2.
Second, we have to reduce chronic inflammation. We need to cool the whole system down. High inflammation is directly linked to lower BDNF and faster neuron death.
And the third one, which is the really exciting part.
The third is to actively stimulate the birth of new brain cells. We do this by finding ways to naturally boost those BDNF pathways to make up for that age-related slowdown.
So shield, reduce, and stimulate.
That's the framework. If you can achieve those 3 things, you are directly investing in your long-term memory, your focus, and your emotional stability, no matter how old you are.
This completely shifts the whole conversation from passive decline to active, lifelong management. Okay, this is a great foundation. We understand the mechanism. We understand the goals. Let's get into the toolkit, the essential fuel kit.
Right. The specific compounds that the research shows can directly support this whole process.
And these are things that work like an internal upgrade system, especially when you pair them with the right lifestyle changes.
Exactly. We're trying to create the perfect internal environment for that neurogenesis factory to thrive.
Let's start with one that people might not immediately connect to brain health, vitamin D. You've called it the brain's hormone regulator. Why is it so critical?
Well, the big misunderstanding about vitamin D is that it's just a vitamin. In the body, and especially in the brain, it acts much more like a steroid hormone. It has receptors all over the brain, but they're particularly dense in the hippocampus.
Right, in the factory itself.
Right where the action is. And its job is to help regulate how signals jump between neurons and, critically, to help manage nerve growth. But its defensive role is just as important.
Against inflammation.
Yes. It's one of our best defenses. Sufficient vitamin D levels help to turn down the volume on inflammatory signals in the brain. Study after study links low vitamin D to a higher risk of cognitive decline and mood disorders later in life, and this is a big reason why. It helps quiet that background noise.
And so many of us are deficient, especially if we work indoors all day. So this feels like really low-hanging fruit for protecting the brain. What's the actionable tip for intake?
For general maintenance, the research suggests around 1,000 to 2,000 IU daily, but honestly, this is one where getting your levels tested is the best possible move. You might need more to correct a deficiency, and you should do that with a doctor, but it's a non-negotiable for brain resilience.
Okay, moving on to probably the most famous brain fuel of all, omega-3s. Specifically, we need to talk about DHA.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating about DHA is that it's not just good for your brain, it pretty much is your brain, structurally. The brain is about 60% fat, and DHA is the single most abundant fatty acid in your neural membranes.
So it's not just fuel, it's the actual building material. What does that mean for how sharp we feel?
It all comes down to flexibility and communication. DHA makes the membranes of your neurons more fluid, and that fluidity allows signals to be sent and received more quickly and efficiently.
This is like greasing the wheels of communication.
Exactly. If the membrane is stiff and brittle because you don't have enough DHA, signals are slow and they get garbled. With plenty of DHA, the data transfer is fast and clear. It's essential for memory, for attention, and for processing speed.
So if you're feeling that brain fog or that cognitive lag, a lack of DHA could literally be slowing down your internal network. What's the actionable tip here?
Well, you want to look at the label of your fish oil or algae oil and make sure the DHA component specifically is at least 250 milligrams per day. And quality matters here. You want a source that's tested for purity for heavy metals because this is a long-term investment.
Right. Next up, a nutrient that I think often gets overlooked until there's a serious problem. Vitamin B12, the myelin manager.
This one is just foundational for your entire nervous system. And a deficiency can be really sneaky but devastating. We're talking brain fog, fatigue, nerve issues, and there's even documented evidence linking low B12 to actual brain shrinkage in older adults.
Brain shrinkage is a terrifying phrase.
Yeah.
So how does B12 prevent that? What does it do as the myelin manager?
Its main job is to produce and maintain myelin. Myelin is the fatty, protective insulation that wraps around the axons of your neurons.
Like the plastic coating on an electrical wire.
That's a classic analogy, and it's perfect. It ensures the electrical signal travels quickly and accurately without losing power. Without enough B12, that myelin sheath starts to break down and the signals misfire or slow to a crawl.
So it's all about infrastructure maintenance. And I know B12 absorption can be a real issue for a lot of people.
It can be, especially as we get older, or for those on certain medications, or for people who don't eat animal products. The sources really recommend looking for the methylcobalamin form of B12 in a supplement. It's often more readily usable by the body. And again, regular testing is key here.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with the defensive heavy hitters. Antioxidants, specifically curcumin and resveratrol.
So we've established that oxidative stress, that rust, is a constant enemy. Antioxidants are the cleanup crew. They go around neutralizing those unstable free radicals before they can do any damage. Resveratrol, which you find in things like grapes and berries, is great because it can cross into the brain and protect the blood vessels there.
But curcumin, which comes from turmeric, seems to be the real superstar in this group. It does more than just play defense.
It really is. What's so exciting about curcumin is the direct BDNF connection. The research shows it can actually increase the expression of BDNF.
So it's not just protecting the old cells, it's actively helping to stimulate the growth of new ones. It's hitting that third goal we talked about.
Exactly. It's an anti-inflammatory and it's a growth promoter. But, and this is a huge but, you can't just sprinkle a little turmeric on your food and expect to get these benefits. There's a major catch.
The absorption issue.
A massive absorption issue. Curcumin, on its own, has very low bioavailability. Your body gets rid of it very quickly. For it to work, the research is crystal clear.
Right.
You have to take it with piperine.
Which is the active compound in black pepper. Why does that work?
Piperine basically acts as a bodyguard for the curcumin. It temporarily inhibits some of the enzymes in your liver that would normally break curcumin down. By doing that, it can increase the amount of curcumin that gets into your bloodstream by, I think, up to 2,000%.
20 times more. Wow.
Without that piperine, you're just not getting the dose you need to cross the blood-brain barrier and have an effect. It's an essential pairing.
That is exactly the kind of practical detail that makes a difference. Okay, so we have our fuel kit. We have the internal upgrade system. Now, let's talk about the engine maintenance. The daily habits that create the right environment for all of this to work. This is where it all comes together for you.
Absolutely. Because if the underlying system, your body's operating system, is chaotic, if you're stressed out and not sleeping, the best supplements in the world can only do so much. The neurogenesis factory will still struggle. These lifestyle habits are non-negotiable.
Let's start with fueling the brain smartly, beyond just the supplements. We talked about stability being key.
The brain is an energy hog. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it uses up to 20% of your energy. And what it demands, more than anything, is a stable, consistent supply of fuel. We have to avoid those wild blood sugar swings.
The peaks and the crashes.
Those crashes are brutal for cognition. They're like a power outage for the brain. The factory floor just shuts down.
So what's the strategy to avoid that?
It's about balanced meals. Eating complex carbs that release energy slowly, pairing them with protein to slow digestion even more, and getting plenty of healthy fats. Eating like that regularly throughout the day keeps the energy supply smooth and steady.
Now, I have to ask about this because it seems to conflict with some other health trends. The research warns against extreme fasting. But we hear so much about intermittent fasting being great for brain health and autophagy. How do those two ideas fit together?
That is an excellent and very important question. There's nuance here. Short-term controlled fasting can be beneficial. It can trigger that cellular cleanup process, autophagy, but prolonged or extreme fasting can backfire for neurogenesis.
How so?
Two ways. First, it can spike your stress hormone, cortisol, which we already know is terrible for the hippocampus. Second, if you're constantly running on an empty tank, the brain goes into survival mode. It's not going to allocate precious energy to a high-cost project like building new cells. It's going to focus on just keeping the lights on.
So the takeaway is, for most people, stability trumps extremity.
For optimizing neurogenesis, absolutely. The factory needs a consistent supply of materials and energy to build.
Great clarification. Next, the big one. Managing stress. We know cortisol physically shrinks the hippocampus, so we have to be proactive.
That physical shrinking is the ultimate warning sign, isn't it? Our goal has to be to regularly interrupt that stress cycle and get our nervous system out of that constant fight or flight mode.
So what are some immediate tools we can use to do that?
The literature points to a few really powerful and accessible ones. First is breath work. Slow, deep breathing, like box breathing, directly stimulates the vagus nerve. That's the main highway of your parasympathetic rest and digest system. It sends a powerful, all-clear signal to your brain.
Okay, that's a direct physiological override.
It is. Second is cold exposure. Even something as simple as finishing your shower with 30 seconds of cold water can train your body's stress response to be less reactive over time. And third, just walking outdoors. You get the movement, which helps metabolize stress hormones, and the exposure to nature, which is a documented stress reducer.
Simple, actionable tools. Love it. Okay, let's talk about moving our bodies. If the goal is to boost BDNF, is a gentle walk enough?
Well, a gentle walk is always good, but if you really want to spike BDNF, intensity matters. The research is really clear that things like high-intensity interval training, HIIE, and resistance training trigger a much bigger and faster release of BDNF than steady-state cardio.
Why does that intense effort work so well?
Because you're creating a short-term positive stress on the body. That challenge signals to the brain that it needs to adapt and grow stronger. It floods the system with growth factors, including BDNF, to help with recovery and adaptation. You're essentially forcing your brain to get stronger to meet the physical challenge.
But what about people who aren't ready for sprinting or heavy lifting?
There's still a minimum effective dose. Even a brisk 20-minute walk every day is crucial because it boosts blood flow to the brain. And better blood flow means better delivery of oxygen, glucose, and all those nutrients we just talked about. So you're making sure the factory is well supplied.
Consistency is key. Okay, last but not least, and maybe the most important of all, sleep. As you say, sleep like your brain depends on it.
Because it absolutely does. Sleep isn't downtime. It's the brain's mandatory maintenance shift. This is when you consolidate memories, file away the day's learning, and most importantly for this topic, it's when the brain detoxes.
Let's get into the details of that, the glymphatic system.
Yes. The glymphatic system is the brain's unique waste clearance system, and it works almost exclusively while you're in deep sleep. What happens is your glial cells actually shrink a little bit, opening up channels. This allows the cerebrospinal fluid to flush through your brain tissue like a high-pressure wash.
And what is it washing away?
It's clearing out metabolic waste that builds up while you're awake. Specifically, things like amyloid beta proteins, which are the proteins that form the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease.
So if you consistently cut your sleep short, that toxic debris just builds up.
It builds up night after night. That accumulation directly harms existing neurons and creates a toxic environment that prevents new neurons from surviving and integrating. It's like trying to build a new house in the middle of a landfill.
So the strategy here is not just about the number of hours, but about protecting the quality of that sleep.
Exactly. Protect your wind down routine like it's the most important workout of your day. You have to give the brain the time it needs to run its cleaning and repair cycle. Growth can't happen in a toxic environment.
Okay, that brings everything together beautifully. Let's try to synthesize all of this for everyone.
I think the main takeaway is that neurogenesis isn't just some cool science fact. It's a genuine, actionable strategy for long-term brain resilience.
It totally reframes the conversation around getting older. We're not just talking about slowing down the decline. We're talking about active, continuous growth and maintenance for our entire lives.
Exactly. When you actively support this process, you are strengthening your memory, you are building a bigger buffer against stress by making your hippocampus more robust, and you're lowering your future risk of serious cognitive decline.
It can sound like a lot when you list it all out, the supplements, the habits. But the core message really seems to be about small, consistent actions.
That's it. The literature shows this again and again. Consistency is so much more important than intensity. By taking these small steps every day, getting your key nutrients, protecting your sleep, moving your body, managing stress, you're not just preserving your mind, you are actively, tangibly upgrading it.
And for those of you listening who want to take all these deep insights and turn them into a clear, manageable routine, finding reliable information is key. We highly recommend checking out bfit.ai. It's a fantastic free resource with clear, practical articles on fitness, nutrition, and wellness that can help you apply these concepts every single day.
And before we finish, we have to give our standard advisory. All the information we've discussed today is for educational purposes only. Please, always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before you start any new supplements or make any big changes to your diet. We're here to help you ask better questions.
Absolutely. Now let's leave you with our final thought for the day, something that really builds on this core idea we've been exploring. If science now confirms that your brain can grow new cells for your entire life, how does that fundamentally change your personal definition of what getting older really means for your potential to learn, grow, and adapt?
It suggests our cognitive peak isn't a destination we passed years ago. It's a horizon that's always ahead of us, as long as we give the brain what it needs to keep building. Keep learning, keep challenging yourself, and keep growing.
A truly empowering note to end on. Thank you so much for breaking all this down for us today.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this knowledge empowers you to take control of your long-term brain health. We'll catch you next time.
Bye for now.